Hey everybody, welcome to a quick little nostalgia clip for a clip from the 80s. I just want to talk about just a few recent things that I got thanks to a couple online nostalgia warriors. As you know, when I am putting together my 80s room or continuing the adventure of finding 80s items, it is for me all about what I had growing up in the 80s, what I loved growing up in the 80s, and how I still love it or wish that it was still around in the 80s. I mean, from the 80s and still around in the modern era. It's like I can't justify spending a shit ton of money on the real deal all the time. eBay and Etsy and thrift stores and places like that, it can be hit or miss when you're trying to recollect those things that you grew up with from the past. And it is always by each person. It's a matter of if they want to spend that amount of money for it or not. Some things I have kept from when I was a child in the 80s, and some things I've recollected. So I have found the actual original items, and for me, those prices were justifiable to have that back in my life. And it's not always the case. But I'm also not somebody who who poo-poos a reproduction or somebody, whether it be a large company like the toy companies or whatever, like even the food companies, when they bring back those original packages, they don't do it quite as original as we would like, certainly I would like, and they always kind of blot it with some sort of retro packaging art on the front, which ruins it, and that's not the other thing. But there's some items out there that I just honestly can't justify paying the money for, and some of those items are food items. For a kid in the 80s, food was a big deal. Not only were we spoiled pop culture wise, but we were spoiled food wise. All terrible food for us, but we ate that shit up, and a lot of it, sticks with you, and it is part of that 80s experience. And one of these items was the Bonkers candy chews. Bonkers was a really fun, the commercials were great, but they would also advertise in TV guides and comic books and whatnot for the Bonkers candy. And the Leaf Company was supposedly supposed to be bringing Bonkers back in the modern times. I guess that fell through. I guess it didn't, come to fruition, which is unfortunate. But there are people out there who also are like-minded and want the same things, and so they recreate it. And this is no exception. This is from Back to the Past store, and I found them through I Had That, and then I quickly jumped on their Instagram and talked to them, and these were lovingly recreated and sent to me very fast. I would assume the inner candy is probably like Starburst or something like that, but these obviously they will not be open. This is for display purposes, but it does super duper bring the feeling back of having Bonkers chew. You can find the commercials on here on YouTube, but yeah, they were awesome. Bunch of different flavors, and so thank you. Back to the past on all those social media sites. Back to the past. But also a big deal was cereal. Now, I do have some original cereal boxes, which, some of them surprisingly were not that expensive to get. We grew up with so many delicious cereals and a ton of cereals based on cartoons, movies, etc., etc. And so I've got an original Ghostbusters cereal box over there. I've got an original C-3POs and a Bill and Ted's. And these were all cereals that I ate. But there's a guy on eBay called Batcave Toys. That's his handle on eBay. And he will reproduce all sorts of things, toy boxes and all sorts of things, but he reproduces some of the best cereal boxes from the 80s and 90s. And again, I only get stuff that meant something to me. I don't, just because it's 80s, I don't get it. It had to have a connection with me growing up in the 80s. So, and these were some of my favorite cereals, along with Ghostbusters, C-3POs, and Bill and Ted. I loved the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cereals and shit like that, the Pac-Man cereal. But Smurf Berry Crunch was one of my favorites. And this is a total recreation of Smurf Berry Crunch. Look at that. This is from June 1st, 1986. But it's awesome and inexpensive. Now, if I were to try to grab a Smurf Berry Crunch, authentic Smurf Berry Crunch box, same with a lot of these, you're looking at $150 to $350, and then even more if they're actually still filled with the authentic cereal. And I can't do that. I can't justify that. But this works just as well because it really, truly, it hits right in the nostalgia feels. And so he also did the E.T. cereal. So awesome. You'd best believe I was eating this cereal. Does he have a date up here? No, there's no date. But he's got the grocery price, which is $1.87 in 1982. Love it. So sweet. And the Gremlin cereal. Look at that. And Ralston, they were kings of doing that shit. Taking properties and turning it into cereals. Saturday morning cereals. But, yeah, so check out Back to the Past and Batcave Toys on eBay if you want to go through some of the rad reproduction, recreations, all that good stuff. And I believe Back to the Past will do some customs as well if they can get a hold of a proper image or whatnot. But I highly recommend them. I will be getting more from them from both places. I love it. It still gives me those feels and takes me back, and I don't have to spend hundreds upon hundreds of dollars to have that childlike wonder and magic back in my life. So that's it. That's all I wanted to say real quick. Thanks for watching, and thanks for subscribing if you like the channel, if you love the 80s, if you love horror movies, weird, absurd comedy, making horror movies like I do, and just the 80s in general, and all the geeky stuff, toy collecting, all that stuff. And this is a dope channel for you to check out, Crip from the 80s. Thanks again, and we'll see you on another episode. Ciao!